The sun vanishes below the horizon in late October and does not return until February. For 4 months, the Arctic becomes a realm of perpetual night. Temperatures plunge past -40 degrees Celsius. The sea ice thickens to 2 meters. Winds scour the tundra. In this darkness, the Inuit people of Greenland, Canada, and Alaska did not merely survive. They built homes, raised families, hunted seals, and maintained complex social systems. They called this season qarmaq, the polar night, and they called it a mother's warm embrace. The question is not whether they endured. The question is how. How do you generate warmth when wood does not exist? How do you hunt animals you cannot see through ice you cannot penetrate? How do you measure time when the sun, which is known to be the universal clock, disappears? The answers lie in an integrated survival system where architecture, technology, and philosophy function as a single organism. Break one link, and the entire chain collapses. The foundation of survival was the igloos, the snow house. In the central Arctic, where even driftwood was scarce, the Inuit built entire winter villages from the only abundant material available, compacted snow. The structure began with a single spiral of beveled blocks, each one cut from dense, wind-packed drifts. As the spiral rose, each block leaned inward. The geometry held itself through compression. No mortar, no support beams, just precise angles and the physics of a self-supporting dome. The material itself was critical. Unlike solid ice, compressed snow contained thousands of trapped air pockets. These pockets are insulated. A well-constructed igloos could maintain an interior temperature far above the external -50 degrees, using nothing but the heat generated by human bodies and a single flame. Light entered through a block of clear, freshwater ice fitted into the dome's wall, casting a pale glow across the interior. But the true engineering was in the entrance. The Inuit built a tunnel lower than the main floor, creating what is known as a cold trap. Cold air is denser than warm air. It sinks. The coldest air in the structure pooled in this lower tunnel, while the warmest air rose to the elevated sleeping platform inside the dome. Convection became architecture. The family slept above the cold, insulated by snow, warmed by their own breath and the flame at the center of the room. These homes were not isolated. In winter villages, the igloos clustered tightly, sharing walls and entrance tunnels. This was not merely a social preference. It was a thermal strategy. Shared walls reduced the total surface area exposed to the wind. A less exposed surface meant less heat loss. Less heat loss meant less fuel required. And fuel was the difference between life and death. The fuel was seal blubber. The technology that burned it was the qarmaq, a half-moon-shaped lamp carved from soapstone. The lamp sat at the center of the home. Its fuel reservoir held rendered seal oil. Along the curved edge, a wick of Arctic cotton and dried moss absorbed the oil and burned with a steady, controlled flame. This flame was not symbolic. It was the heart of the survival system. The qarmaq provided light in a season of darkness. It provided heat in temperatures that could kill in minutes. It boiled water for soup. It dried wet fur clothing, which would otherwise freeze solid and lose all insulation. A hunter returning from the ice with damp clothes faced a choice, either to dry them by the lamp or wear them frozen the next day. But frozen clothing was a death sentence. The lamp made all the difference. However, the lamp required constant management. The wick burned slowly and unevenly, and impurities in the wick caused the flame to sputter and smoke. A poorly tended flame wasted fuel and produced little heat. The tool used to tend the flame was the takuti, a small hook-shaped instrument. The flamekeeper used it to shape the wick into a precise point, to remove impurities, and to adjust the oil flow. This was not casual maintenance. It was technical expertise. Every adjustment affected the efficiency of the burn. Efficiency determined how long the blubber supply would last, and the blubber supply determined whether the family would survive until spring. Traditionally, women operated the qarmaq. The takuti was often crafted by a husband for his wife, marking her role as the flamekeeper of the home. The symbolism ran deeper than the labor division. In Inuit belief, women are the life carriers. The flame, burning continuously against the cold and dark, was the most potent material expression of that role. Life itself depended on her precision with the hook, her knowledge of the wick, her ability to coax maximum heat from every drop of oil. The interdependence was absolute. The hunter brought the seal. The seal provided the blubber. The blubber fueled the lamp. The lamp dried the hunter's clothes. The dried clothes allowed the hunter to return to the ice. If the flamekeeper's skill faltered, the clothes stayed damp. The hunter froze. The family starved. There was no margin for error. This created a harsh metabolic equation. The Inuit body adapted to the cold through an elevated basal metabolic rate and the strategic use of brown fat, which generates heat. But this internal furnace required enormous caloric input. The traditional diet, seal meat, walrus fat, polar bear flesh, was calibrated to sustain this demand. Yet obtaining that food required hunting in the most hostile environment on Earth. Every calorie burned hunting had to be replaced by the hunt itself. The efficiency of the shelter and the lamp directly reduced the metabolic load. Every degree of warmth retained in the igloviac was a calorie saved. Every hour the lamp burned efficiently was an hour the hunter did not need to spend on the ice. Hunting in total darkness required a cognitive shift. Vision became secondary. Other senses dominated. The primary winter prey was the ringed seal, which maintained breathing holes through the thickening sea ice. These holes, called igloo, were vertical tunnels through ice that could be 2 meters thick. Locating them required reading the surface. A slight depression in the snow, a faint texture difference. The hunter moved slowly, listening. The sound of a seal scraping ice below was nearly inaudible. The sound of a seal breathing at the surface was brief. Miss it, and the animal vanished. Once a hole was located, the hunter checked for recent use. If a thin layer of ice covered the opening, the seal had not surfaced recently. So the hunter moved on. If the hole was clear, the hunter settled downwind, remaining motionless. Hours could pass. The hunter could not cast a shadow into the hole, could not make a sound. The seal surfaced for seconds. The strike had to be instant and precise. This technique, called maulik, was not learned quickly. It required years of training, passed from elder to child through observation and practice. Navigation across the ice presented another challenge. Landmarks disappeared in the dark. The tundra became a monotonous expanse of white and black. The Inuit navigated by reading the environment at a resolution invisible to outsiders. Prevailing winds carved snowdrifts into specific shapes. These shapes repeated across the landscape. The Inuit language contained precise terms for each variation. A hunter could determine direction by the angle and form of the drift alone, even in darkness, even in a blizzard. Where natural features were insufficient, the Inuit built inuksut, cairns of stacked stone. These markers served multiple purposes. Some funneled caribou during hunts. Others marked safe routes. In the dark, they became fixed reference points, allowing hunters to orient themselves when all else failed. On clear nights, the sky provided guidance. The absence of sunlight revealed the stars with perfect clarity. The Inuit identified key constellations. Agyarluk, the North Star, anchored the northern sky. Tunturyuk, known elsewhere as the Big Dipper, rotated through the night. Chengartarak, or Cassiopeia, traced its arc. These were not abstract patterns. They were friends who became guides in moments of danger. Celestial navigation required intimate knowledge of the stars' movements through the season, adjusted for latitude and the slow drift of sidereal time. The landscape was saturated with data, and the hunter learned to perceive it through touch, sound, memory, and astronomical observation. The environment became a high-resolution map accessible only through deep, generational knowledge. This knowledge had a name: Inuit Kaujimaja Tukangit, often abbreviated as IQ. It encompassed everything from seal behavior to ice formation to weather prediction. This was not written. They demonstrated, practiced, and transmitted it through storytelling. Storytelling intensified during Ta'ak. With outdoor activity constrained by cold and darkness, the interior of the igluviac became the stage for cultural transmission. Okaluktuara, which was the practice of oral narrative, was the primary means of passing down history, myth, hunting techniques, and ethical guidelines. The elders spoke, and the children listened. A tale about a hunter and a seal might encode information about ice safety, animal behavior, and moral conduct simultaneously. 4 months without sunlight could fracture a community. Isolation, darkness, and cold are known triggers for depression and cognitive decline. The Inuit mitigated this through deliberate cultural framing. Ta'ak was not a season of dread. It was the season of the mother's warm embrace. It was the time for gathering, for visiting, for laughter. The tightly clustered homes enforced constant social interaction. Families moved between igluviacs through shared tunnels. Meals were communal. The flame light drew people together. Games provided mental stimulation. Ajurarurit, a complex string game similar to Cat's Cradle, was played using reindeer sinew. The patterns created by the string often illustrated the narratives being told. The game required spatial reasoning and dexterity. It kept hands busy and minds sharp during the long hours of confinement. The Inuit also reframed their relationship with time. The solar cycle, the foundation of most human temporal systems, became irrelevant. Days and nights lost their boundaries. In its place, the Inuit operated on what researchers call eco-time, a temporal system based on natural rhythms rather than mechanical clocks. Time was marked by the body's hunger and sleep cycles, by the movements of the moon and stars, by the changing texture of the ice. This fluid temporality reduced the psychological disorientation caused by the absence of day-night cycles. The night sky itself became a focal point for contemplation. The Inuit described the universe as a sacred ancient text, a cathedral whose roof was lost to infinity. They watched the aurora borealis ripple across the darkness. They tracked the planets. They interpreted patterns and movements, searching for messages. This was not superstition. It was a method of maintaining cognitive engagement with the cosmos, of finding order and meaning in an environment that could easily feel chaotic and hostile. Food preservation extended the security provided by the hunt. The Arctic environment functioned as a natural freezer. Large cuts of seal and walrus were stored on the ice surface or buried in permafrost, where they remained frozen indefinitely. Chunks of meat were submerged in seal oil, which prevented oxidation and added fat content. But the most sophisticated preservation techniques involved fermentation. Iguanak was made by burying walrus or seal meat during the summer and allowing it to ferment. By winter, the meat was softened and intensely flavored. It was consumed raw during community feasts or during lean hunting periods. Kiviak, a more elaborate preparation, involved stuffing hundreds of small seabirds called auks into a hollowed seal skin, sealing it and burying it under stones for several months. The result was a nutrient-dense, fermented delicacy reserved for special occasions. These preservation methods required foresight and planning. The decision to bury meat in summer was an investment in winter survival. It required understanding seasonal cycles, microbial fermentation, and the social timing of feasts. The feasts themselves were not mere celebrations. They were psychological reinforcements, moments of abundance and joy deliberately placed within the hardest season to sustain morale and cohesion. The qarmaq represented a different adaptive strategy. This was a transitional dwelling used in spring and autumn, when conditions were too warm for a full igloviac, but too cold for summer tents. The qarmaq combined permanent materials, sod, stone, whalebone, with a portable roof of skin or driftwood. The structure was semi-permanent, adapting to the unpredictable weather of the shoulder seasons. It could be erected quickly in an emergency. It blended the thermal mass of earth with the flexibility of portable materials. The truncated dome shape provided structural strength while allowing for smoke, ventilation. Further south and in coastal areas, some Inuit groups built more permanent winter structures. The classic Thule people constructed semi-subterranean sod houses reinforced with whalebone and driftwood. These homes required access to significant caches of whale meat and oil, stored on land and consumed throughout the winter. The architecture reflected resource availability. Where whales were plentiful and structural materials existed, permanent homes were viable. Where resources were scarce and mobile hunting was necessary, the igloviac's portability and simplicity made it the optimal solution. The survival system extended beyond individual families. The clustering of homes enforced a network of mutual dependence. A successful hunt was shared. A family struggling with fuel received assistance. Knowledge was communal property. The failure of one household threatened the stability of the entire cluster. This was not altruism. It was a structural necessity. The margin for error was too narrow for isolated survival. The reframing of darkness as an embrace rather than an enemy reveals the deepest layer of Inuit adaptation. The philosophy was explicit. Humans are not separate from nature, but fundamentally part of it. The forces of the earth, the cold, the dark, the wind, were not adversaries to be conquered, but elements to be understood and integrated into life. The Inuit spoke of listening to the shudder of the ice, of feeling the living energy of the cosmos, of perceiving the intimate interlocking architecture of equilibrium. This was not poetic abstraction. It was a practical cognitive framework that reduced fear and maintained psychological stability in conditions that would otherwise be unbearable. The integration of these systems created a whole greater than the sum of its parts. The igloviac retained warmth, reducing metabolic demand. The qarmaq generated heat, drying clothes and enabling the next hunt. The hunter's sensory mastery located seals in darkness. The flamekeeper's precision maximized fuel efficiency. The storyteller's narratives transmitted knowledge and reinforced social bonds. The cultural reframing of darkness maintained psychological health. Each element supported the others. Remove one, and the system unraveled. This was not survival through dominance or brute force. It was survival through precision, integration, and deep ecological intelligence. The Inuit did not fight the Arctic. They listened to it, read it, and built their lives within its constraints. They transformed the most hostile environment on Earth into a home. They found warmth in the cold, light in the darkness, and community in isolation. They endured 4 months without the sun, not by waiting for its return, but by creating a way of life that needed no sun at all. The lesson extends beyond the Arctic. Across continents and centuries, humans have faced environments that seemed impossible. Deserts, mountains, ocean crossings. Each time, survival depended not on a single innovation, but on the integration of technology, knowledge, and worldview into a coherent system. The Inuits' achievement during qarmaq stands as one of the most complete examples of this integration. It demonstrates that the boundaries of human survival are not fixed by biology alone. They are expanded by ingenuity, shaped by culture, and sustained by the willingness to perceive the world not as an obstacle, but as a text to be read and understood.